Welcome to the Leading Ladies podcast with international leadership coach, speaker, author, trainer, and your host, Fiona Mackay. The Leading Ladies podcast shares stories and advice from women around the world who have successfully navigated the glass ceiling. You'll gain powerful insights into strategies for cracking the glass ceiling, embracing your self-worth and value, and advocating for yourself and others. So please join Fiona for frank, courageous, and heartfelt conversations designed to take you on a journey to new levels of personal and professional success.
Welcome back, leading ladies and male allies. We are here for another exciting episode of the Leading Ladies podcast. And today we have one of our first few male guests joining us, Matt Heger, the founder of Pineapple Empire. Pineapple Empire is a stealth mode disruptive frontier and deep tech space startup whose mission is to accelerate the world's transition to the new space economy. However, many of our listeners might recognize Matt as the leading male ally in pulling together the top women in aviation and aerospace to follow on LinkedIn list. So welcome, Matt.
Thank you, Fiona. It's an honor and a privilege to be on your podcast here. My first podcast ever, technically, unless you count one or two clippets I did when I was 12 on my first iMac. So it's a great honor to be here.
Oh, wonderful. Well, we promise to take good care of you. We'll go easy on you.
Wonderful. I appreciate it.
If you've listened to our previous podcasts, Matt, which I know you have, you loved Rachel's podcast. You were telling me about that. So Rachel, if you're listening, your Imposter Syndrome podcast, he loved it. You'll know that my first question is, what are your thoughts on the glass ceiling? Does it still exist?
Absolutely. 100%. Totally. It is definitely there. I mean, we hear about it all the time in the form of the K gap. And I think more importantly, where I relate to it a lot more recently is just not being heard or not having seats at the table or not being validated with that. I'm still exploring mine. It's just coming to my view recently. So I'm exploring a lot of my just different identities and things that affect me and becoming aware of these things. But I can just definitely say it totally exists. It's there for sure.
And so how have you observed it with women in the workplace and women that have come into your sphere of influence?
So I've only just started really looking out for it specifically in the workplace. And I've only just recently got into positions where that sort of thing is the more common, like where it happens, where all the stories happen, the corporate setting, basically. I've been in a startup or independent background working, in non-corporate jobs and not really seeing it specifically there. But I have noticed there was this one time I was in this retail startup on the floor, and it was just a retail position. But I did find out later on that I was making more than women who had been there longer than I had.
Wow.
So, I mean, and it's on the retail floor. So it wasn't even a corporate environment, which just kind of shocked me. So, I mean, first of all, just that one there. And then the other ones are harder to pin down, especially in those like lower, more entry level positions where you don't necessarily, where nobody's really getting a seat at the table and nobody's, really technically being heard. So it's one thing to say like, whether it's just affecting them specifically or affecting others. But, if I dug back or if I was more aware at the time, maybe I would have seen maybe men in the workplace getting more opportunities to take on more responsibility. But that's kind of what I've observed so far.
Interesting. For me, I noticed that a lot of people out there think that, oh, it's great now. Women are doing well in the workplace. Everything's equal. And I hear so many stories from men and women where there's still a lot of work that we all need to do. So I appreciate you being part of that journey. Now, we know that you are from, mixed heritage. And so I'm very curious if you would be willing to share a little bit more about that with us. And if you think that in some ways this may have contributed to your glass ceiling.
Again, absolutely, for sure. I'm the son of one of the first women journeyman carpenter in the U.S. She's my mother. She's white, basically. She's German, Irish. So I get 50% of my background from that. But I'm also the son of an United Airlines mechanic. My dad, who is Okinawan and Hungarian, and they're second generation Hawaiian, or born in Hawaii. And I was also born in Hawaii as well. So that's where I kind of get that background as well. And I've just
and the background behind you, I see.
And the background behind me as well. I keep that out there. And the whole Pineapple Empire thing, it all kind of ties in and fuses together. It's all part of the plan, basically.
For those of you that are joining audio only, Matt has a really, really cool background of all these, tropical flowers and stuff that, represents his Hawaiian heritage. It's pretty cool.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of it. I love all the plants and the organic naturalness of it. And it just kind of reminds me of home a little bit because I don't get back there super often, and I just love it. So I definitely know it has contributed a lot. I mean, I've grown up around a lot of strong, independent women, my mom for one, and I have an older half sister as well from, a previous marriage that she had. And she was, quite young when she had my older sister as well. And then my older sister has been on her own journey, and she's independent. She takes on a lot of things on her own. My aunt, I'd also have to credit, has been there with me the whole time. She's on my dad's side, actually. So both sides have just strong women just guiding my life and getting involved in really, even if I do protest, loving me quite a bit, in, either whether that's tough love or just, doting, depending on who it's coming from. So they've definitely shaped and influenced. And I think my mother's story, being one of the first journeyman carpenters in the U.S. is definitely it's becoming a bigger story, and like playing more into the things I think about. I'm like, oh, that is really cool. And that does make sense for the background. But then the whole mixed race thing, I really straddle a couple different worlds. And I'm part of the mixed race community is a special one. And especially the Asian and like white mixes have a kind of special, they got a special name for it on the islands. We're called Hapas.
Hapas.
And really almost neither group kind of takes you in. They both accept you a little bit, but you're not a part of either group. So I wouldn't call it glass ceiling necessarily, but there's like these very thin glass barriers on each group.
So being mixed race, you do get some experience of obstacles that you might not face otherwise.
Totally. It's a kind of being allowed to maybe hang out, but not actually be a part of the discussion, or maybe even sometimes not hang out. We can be acquaintances, but I'm not part of the actual in-group.
Yeah, I've heard that before from other friends of mine that are mixed race. It's a very interesting dilemma. Thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate you going there.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for asking. It's something that I've been exploring a lot.
Yeah. And do you think perhaps those experiences help you with your compassion for some of the challenges that women in male-dominated industries face?
Yeah, I definitely think so. Because you have that experience, you can actually have empathy for it. So it's deeper than just sympathy or an awareness or an understanding that on a theoretical or philosophical level exists, where maybe I haven't, and I'm only becoming aware of it now, is maybe I haven't specifically felt that glass ceiling, but starting to feel them now that I am in that corporate environment, going, all right, we got to break through this thing. This is just silly. So it does give me those experiences to draw on.
Yeah. Well, based on my experience of you, Matt, I imagine the glass ceilings have been there. It's just you've been so determined to smash through them, you've perhaps not noticed them. And that's why we're going to come back to the topic of mindset a little later. But before we dive into the topic of mindset, I am dying to know where the inspiration came from for you to create the top women in aviation and aerospace to follow on LinkedIn list.
Well, as you started talking to me a little bit more and more now, I think you're beginning to see where some of those are coming from. And I think a few people who, and not even everybody who does know me, maybe doesn't know I'm quite so obsessed with it, but I'm just trying to get to space. The mission of Pineapple Empire is to accelerate the world's transition to a new space economy. So we started rolling out This is actually the second list that we've done or that I've done. And the first one was such a success. And I saw like so many cool engagements and interactions. We did it with my university alumni was the first list that I did back in December. And just the amazing value that it provided to the community, I kind of got hooked on it. And I was like, okay, well, we're going to do another one.
But why top women rather than top people?
Well, so I have been thinking about this question a lot because it kind of just naturally came to me and intuitively came to me. I mean, the aerospace was easy just because it's so, adjacent to the space field that I was like, all right, that's our foot in the door. I might be the son of an airline mechanic, but I haven't like actually been in the industry and I got nothing there. And let's build out the network. And if we're going to build out the network, what makes sense? For women though, the choice I think comes down to, I mean, my world is just saturated with so many exemplary, incredible women. All my, no offense to all my guy friends out there, but my women friends are like so incredible and so amazing.
I love that.
They're just a little bit better than us in a lot of ways. And I take a lot of inspiration, plus my background with my mom and my aunt. And then just being, it is 2021. And I think, the news and social media is saturated with a call out for allies and, helping out. And from a self-first principles perspective of trying to get to space and accelerate that mission, I also looked at it as, well, I mean, that's like 50% of the population. Like if we're, going to hit a lot of people, then that's a group that is looking for help, calling out for that. And really what I've also begun to learn is specifically within that industry where it is very male dominated. So I just kind of saw, a lot of mutual synergies or, I think maybe you'll appreciate this term. I learned it from somebody else that I was networking with last year as the chief badass officer. I'm looking for mutual hell yesness. And,
hell yeah,
aerospace. And I was like, hell yeah. Like also just thinking about people I want to work with that just came on. I was like, yeah, I want to work with badass ladies of aerospace and aviation. Why not? Who wouldn't,
I love that. And for those of you that aren't yet connected with me on LinkedIn, my title is Chief Badass Officer. It started off as a bit of fun, but it's really taken off. So
I certainly love it.
But have you met other Chief Badass Officers?
Not by title.
Not by
just
but by behavior.
By behavior. Yeah, no, I know a lot of badass women.
There's a lot more than they realize. There's so many badass women out there that don't even realize they're badass. And so Leading Ladies is on a mission to make sure that women own that part of them, because I think there's so many amazing women out there that are making a big difference. And I really like what you said about the link to the space economy. 50% of the population is female. And one of the things that I have had a few discussions with people about is around new technologies. I was talking with a friend who works for a UAS company, and she was saying it's different here because we are new companies. We don't have the 100-year heritage that a lot of these aerospace companies have. So the traditions, the cultural norms that have evolved in traditional aerospace, they don't necessarily exist in some of these emerging technologies. And so I do agree that in space, UAS, vertical lift, all these, electric airplanes, I think there's a real opportunity to challenge the status quo. So I commend you for taking extra steps to be a part of that.
Thank you. And I so agree. And it's also part of why I wanted to get involved in that is there's so much opportunity out there. And for, particularly glass ceilings and especially with space, it just seems like there's just a great argument for there not being any glass ceilings. It's space. Let's go.
I wholeheartedly agree. So Matt, when you aren't creating lists of amazing women for us all to celebrate, what do you do? Who is Matt Higa?
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of different answers to that one. A little bit of everything. My new favorite phrase is jack of all trades, master of some, and mastering more day by day.
I like that.
So generally every day I wake up and I play a little bit of chess. That's fine. It's kind of my game is I play a lot of chess. I'm got another glass ceiling. I'm trying to smash through there. I'm trying to become I don't know why I set these goals for myself, but I'm trying to become world champion within the next 10 to 20 years.
I
So I'm
love that.
trying to, it becomes, the more I look into it, the more feasible space looks. It's just like, maybe I'll get to space, but maybe I won't become world champion at chess. That one's a tough one. So I'll do that a lot, but I have a full-time job besides Pineapple Empire, where I do work at Tesla, full-time, 40 hours a week, over there on their platform. I can't really say too much. They have me on a lot of NDAs. So, one of the few things I can say is that I'm an advisor over at Tesla. I'm helping them improve their systems and creating processes, and helping them accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. So when I'm not accelerating the transition to the new space economy, I'm helping transition the world to the sustainable energy, which also feeds into that ultimate goal there as well of the space economy. So I kind of see that as one and the same. Play a bunch of Rocket League, if anybody's familiar out there. I love that game. Let's play that one as well. But I have a dog as well. We go on walks, and I just try to meditate, do some yoga, stay fit. I do Spartan races. I'm training for a 30-mile, 60 obstacle race in September in Tahoe.
Do you ever sleep?
Less and less. Last night I was up till 3 a.m. just working on things, and it's just so hard to stop sometimes. But I do sleep. That is, I haven't found a cure for that one yet. But I do love it.
Let us know when you do, because I would love to know. So tell me a little bit more about Pineapple Empire. What is a deep tech space startup?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, and one that I pose to myself every day. I guess the deep tech, I mean, we've talked about the space part, and that one's kind of obvious, or maybe not necessarily so obvious. I mean, if we go back to the way origin story of everything beyond, after, being raised by, my parents and the strong women in my life and just everybody who brought me, it does come from a childhood goal of, and this is why I loved Rachel's podcast so much, just so much. When it hit me there, like, I was like, okay, this person is me. It was so weird to hear her voice be like almost literally the voice in my head saying the same things. It comes from an original desire to take over the world, which hasn't completely gone away. So in a way, Pineapple Empire, the whole empire thing, kind of continues that. Except for I much less don't necessarily want to be in control of the world as much anymore. So it's kind of taking different routes. So I'm kind of looking into the space colony area sort of things. I've mentioned before, and I've started, again, big audacious goals. And I just have a naturally masochistic, I guess, like ambition where I just see a goal. And for any like How I Met Your Mother fans out there, like the Barney, I think his name is Barney Stinson, the character over there, and that character didn't really age well for the modern age with feminism and everything, but it's challenge accepted. So I just see something and my brain goes, oh, okay, all right, let's see if we can do it. So somebody on my feed had posted the other day that China's trying to plan the first human mission to Mars by 2033, and my brain went, okay, let's see if we can do it by 2032. So I guess I'm kind of working on a 10-year plan to get the first humans to Mars by 2032. Maybe that includes me, maybe it doesn't. I don't know how it all works out. I'm trying to just manifest it. And every day I just kind of question, like, what do we need to be doing to get there? Right now we're networking and we're breaking other glass ceilings. And, I guess the other drive for the top women in aerospace and aviation list and any future ones is almost kind of a recruiting effort, is getting, the message out there and the awareness, like, hey, we're doing this thing. Does anybody else want to come do this thing with us? And I'm not real too particular on how exactly we do it, but let's collaborate and, try to do it right. I'm also very cognizant and aware of like trying to not repeat the mistakes of the past with colonialism. So I've spoken to some really cool other badasses out there, specifically a astrobiologist who's really kind of changed my idea on the real colonialization concept and maybe going towards more exploration. But yeah, it just ties in a lot of different interests. And I mean, colonialization or going to space and the future humans on Mars draws in a lot of like, one thing that I love is like governance. I mean, one of my favorite games growing up was Risk. So, that's another world dominance game, but also I played nation states and just setting up new ways of structuring societies and taking down those glass ceilings, seeing what we've got now, honoring the past, but also moving forward. But some technologies we're working on, AI and blockchain, and DAOs, if anybody out there is familiar with them, decentralized autonomous organizations. Those are the kind of deep techs we're working with.
Excellent, excellent. And wouldn't it be fantastic if the first humans to Mars was an all-woman mission?
That would be amazing.
I know some people might say, "Oh, well, that's not very inclusive." But hey, there's been plenty of all-male missions to space. Just imagine if we had an all-female mission. Wouldn't that be badass?
It would. I think it should be.
Yeah.
First crew to the moon, all men. First crew to Mars. Let's make it all women.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So Matt, we hear Tesla, we hear wannabe world chess champions, space startups. So it sounds to me like smashing glass ceilings is just second nature to you. And I know we've had a lot of conversations offline about, how mindset contributes to that. So after our ad break, I would love to dive into that with you. So we're just going to take a moment to recognize GM Defense, one of our amazing sponsors, and then we'll be right back. I'd like to take a moment to pause and recognize GM Defense, our sponsor that helps make this podcast possible. GM Defense is driving the future of military mobility by leveraging the best-in-class capabilities of General Motors for unmatched innovation, proven performance, and breakthrough lifecycle economics. Learn more at www.gmdefensellc.com. And watch out for new job posts as they expand and strengthen their team. You can also follow them on Twitter and LinkedIn. The GM Defense team is amazing, and we are proud that they sponsor the Leading Ladies of podcast. And back to today's guest. So Matt, returning to our topic, we've been learning all about your big audacious goals, smashing ceilings, and I noticed you just had this very, very calm, chilled out presence about you. And I'm kind of curious how that links to mindset and your attitude towards, breaking some of these glass ceilings. So tell me more about why you wanted to talk about mindset with me today.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite topics. So I'm glad you asked. I'm glad we're talking about it today because I just could talk about, I could talk about almost anything for quite extensively, but especially mindsets since it is so important for everything. I don't know if it comes from the Aloha background of the islands. I don't know if that's the chilled vibe that just naturally comes out. If I get it from my dad or because he's always a very go with the flow and he's always difficult to get ruffled. But even if there is a natural draw towards it and a natural innate zenness, it's weird because I don't think I've ever felt it. I always feel like I'm always constantly not super zen, and so every time somebody says you're very chill, I'm like, really? You think that? That's it. That's cool. I don't know how you got that because I'm what? I'm way up here. So it definitely, there is a practice to it. And I think with any natural talent, there is a practice to it. If you do want to take it to the next level, there's a practice to it. I get that from sports. I grew up playing baseball and a couple other things. And if you want to get better, I think it all did start with baseball, quite honestly. I was a pitcher, and that's where, I don't know who taught me this, but before, games where I knew I was pitching, I would go into the zone. And I would basically meditate and get ready for that and get my mind ready for it. And they do say that baseball is a thinking man's game, and pitchers specifically are
a thinking woman's game.
Or a thinking woman's game. Absolutely. I'd love to have some women in baseball, not just, softball specifically. I think that's kind of a glass ceiling a little bit there too. That could be busted, but it is certainly a practice. And so just going from then to now, Spartan racing, chess, to get to the next level, it's always a mindset. And that's what I always come back to. My parents raised me on the 7 effective habits of, first it was children and 7 effective habits of adults. And I've got all these self-help books and all these things. And it just always seems, and what I've learned from my studies on behavior, and I've particularly technically been writing a rogue underground behind the scenes dissertation on self-determination theory.
Oh, I'm just working on a dissertation as well, on top of everything else.
Well, it's always in the background, and I always forget that I'm doing it. But it has been
Yep.
a good 8 years now. And a friend did point out maybe it's time to start writing the conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of working on that. But when you're looking at paradigm shifts and like actually achieving like, and that's what I think maybe the glass ceiling is a paradigm shift a little bit, where people have to think like, okay, that doesn't have to be that way,
Mm-hmm.
but it is all in our head, and it is all like mental well, it's not just all in our head, but like a lot of things that go on in the world and a lot of the barriers that we have are just mental constructs that other people either put on you or that we put on each other, whether in their
Yep.
living
Yeah,
beliefs.
I totally agree. As you know, yeah, I'm an executive coach, and I very much specifically focus on mindset, particularly helping people rewrite their inner narrative so they can break through their glass ceilings. And so I have my views on what that looks like, and I totally agree with you on this whole. We have our own glass ceiling as well as ones that society's put on us. But when you talk about shifting your mindset, what specifically is Matt Heger talking about?
I think I mean, for me, since I do struggle a little bit with anxiety and
Mm-hmm.
depression sometimes, that it can be, I mean, you just get stuck in these either intrusive thoughts or just recurring thoughts or these self-limiting beliefs that you're just telling yourself all the time. So it is just purposely shifting into a different thought state. So I practice meditation and yoga a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm
Yep.
getting more focused on it and specifically calling out the emotions or thoughts I want to have. So affirmations are a big thing for me, and literally writing things down and writing the goals. And I mean, Pineapple Empire is kind of an exercise, and like taking those down is like writing it out, writing the story.
Yeah.
And recently, what I came across recently was a really cool concept of how to write that story is imagining that you all already are the success, and that currently right now that you're just documenting that, like you're going back in time to see like, okay, what did you do to get there? And that's kind of how I operate, kind of like a backstroke through time.
Yeah, with my clients, I have quite a few exercises that I do with them where I will make them visualize what it's going to look like when they get there. I mean, for me, it's getting there means, walking out onto a stage in front of thousands and, being as influential as all these men out there, like, Napoleon Hill and Jack Canfield and Tony Robbins and all these people that people are always quoting. I want women there. And so I like to think about that. And so I have my clients do the same. What is it that you want, and what's it going to feel like when you're going to get there? Because if you can visualize it, the brain doesn't necessarily know the difference between what's real and what's imagined. And it just puts you on a completely different frequency. And I didn't actually, as a scientist, I didn't used to believe in all that. I used to think, oh, that's just woo-woo BS. Why would I do that? And just a series of things have happened to me in my life. And particularly after I watched the movie The Secret, and I'm like, this stuff works. And, I think it's a mixture of universe and, brain science. But I'm a convert. And so, yeah, I'm kind of going off on a tangent right now because I'm so excited about what we're talking about. But I definitely buy into that. So, what are the different thought states that you try to get into in order to help you, keep going after these big goals and get back up once you get knocked down? Like, what is it that you go after?
Oh, that's a good one. Lately, I do have a flow coach that I've been working with. So literally actually practicing the flow in a very, very determined sort of a, focused state. And so my motivation is focused now on all the times that I have been in flow and trying to draw that energy back up and focusing on the emotions that I had then. So I have a few different emotional energy states that I try to key in on, whether it's like courage or motivation or sometimes excitement or anything that, really an energetic, because with the anxiety and depression. So I actually, it depends. Sometimes I do sleep a lot. I either sleep not at all or sleep a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So, I got to drag myself out of the bed sometimes. And so sometimes it's just around energy and getting going and literally just visualizing what the success would look like, happiness, and really trying to design that life in my head that, I'm trying to achieve, or what those goals look like. So I do focus a lot on the courage and confidence types of affirmations, or success types of affirmations and self-talk, to kind of combat those imposter syndrome, the anxiety, depression, like thoughts where I'm like telling myself, and like those thoughts are almost telling me like, you can't do it. This is too scary. This is overwhelming. And you won't ever do it. Versus, why can't you do it? Like, why wouldn't you do it? Like, you've already done it. Like, come on, let's get going.
Yeah, why not me?
Welling up those, yeah, why not me? Like, it's always the anxiety says like, why you? But the other question is just as valid. Why not you? Somebody has to do it, which is funny enough, like the thought process I had to go through right before I started, launching the Top Women on LinkedIn and Aerospace initiative, because I was like, well, why me? Like, I'm not a woman. Like, who am I to like even be an ally? Like, I don't think I've even like spoken out, like, particularly on anything, like, besides, some reshares on Instagram, this or that or the other thing. Is like, who are you? Why you? Like, why anything? Why should you go to space? Like, why should you build the company? Like, but it's also, why not? And who else? If like, I don't see, a lot of other people doing it, and there's still a call for the allies out there. So just kind of almost answering a call too.
Yeah. I love the phrase, if not you, who? If not now, when? And I actually do like the second part, if not now, when, as well. Because I think one of the things that causes people to give up is that the stuff doesn't happen for you straight away. Like, you have to wait a long period of time. But when I was 14, I said, one day I'm going to live in America. I'm going to live in America. And I was dead certain on that. And when I was 29, I moved here. And then when I was 19, I said, hey, one day I want to live by the water. I've been on vacation and was by the water. And now guess what? 33. Well, I'm not 33 now, but when I was 33, I bought a lake house. So now I live by the water. And it's interesting. I just find that the more and more I put out there and just have that faith that it will come back to me at some point, it does eventually happen. And there aren't moments where I don't get really scared. Like, I worry about leading ladies. I'm like, what if I can't make it everything I want it to be? What if it fails? But I try and snap myself out of that, so I can just keep focusing on the goal rather than what could go wrong. Mm-hmm. So I know we're getting close towards the end of our time here, Matt, but I would love to know, what are some pieces of advice that you would like to give our listeners on some little things you can do to help manage your mindset in order to help you go after those big goals and smash those ceilings?
I think, we touched on, a couple of them already. One of my favorite, like I mentioned earlier, the whole like documenting in reverse, like as if you've already been there, kind of ties into the first, the predecessor to that phrase. The one that guided me before that was the arriving versus arrived mindset. Is like, we're always constantly seeking like, oh, when I get there, when I do this, when I do that, when I become this, what if you are already there? Like, because if you think about it over time, like, you are constantly making these daily steps. And maybe it's also important to, not discount your little victories every day of like constantly building yourself into the person you want to be. And at some point, whether you believe it or not, like, you have to arrive somewhere technically.
Yeah.
It goes into the imposter syndrome. So like, give yourself that credit, take ownership of it so that you can step into the new thing, so that you can move into a new arriving thing. So you can figure something else to go for. Like, well, when I get there, you can choose a new one. And just value the small daily things. They're not the sexiest or most badass day to day sometimes, but in the end, those small little, pebbles add up to some pretty huge rocks and mountains in the end. And you'll just kind of look back at that journey there. And it doesn't have to be the end, but progress is progress. I think it was Winston Churchill who said, to improve is to change, and to be perfect is to change often. And that's just us all day, every day, constantly changing and making those tweaks and fine tuning them. And don't be too hard on yourself because you got to be your own cheerleader at the end of the day as well. That's who you have in your corner. And you got to be in your own corner, because you can rely on other people to be in your corner to some extent, but at the end of the day, it all comes back to you, and that's who you got to push to, keep it going. And that's who you live with this person all day, every day. So I got this from one of my favorite YouTubers, Anna Akana. She says, it's just one of my favorites. Like, if you wouldn't say that to your best friend, like, why would you say it to yourself?
Absolutely. It's time to stop beating ourselves up and start, cheerleading ourselves up instead. I like it. So for our audience, document in reverse. Imagine what it is like when you're there. But remember to take credit along the way. Think about how the journey is developing you, not just the destination, and be your own cheerleader. I think those are some wonderful pieces of advice, Matt, and really, really appreciate you being here and sharing that. And I'm sure all of you are wondering, Top 62, head over to Pineapple Empire, head over to my LinkedIn page, head over to www.leadingladiesOf.com, and you can find out about all of this. And we're going to have more podcasts interviewing the women from the top women list. And we have a whole bunch of them coming to speak at the Leading Ladies of Aerospace annual virtual summit on September 23rd. And you'll even get to meet some of them at the after party. So stay tuned. Follow us in all of our different areas, social media, website, LinkedIn, YouTube, wherever it is. And more inspiration will come. And hopefully you two will be sitting there saying, I think I'm a chief badass officer too. So thanks for being here, Matt. And thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you soon.
Thank you for listening, everyone. We hope you now have additional tools and insights for creating your own cracks in the glass ceiling. If you think this will inspire and help others, please share this episode on your social media and leave your comments on MckayUnlimited.com/podcasts. For more tips and support as you embrace your journey through the glass ceiling, please join our community Facebook group at leadingladiesofFB.com.